The Fox News studio pulsed with energy, stage lights glaring like interrogators. Outside, the New York chill bit through the night, but inside, the tension was just beginning to heat up. Baron Trump, 19, tall as a lamppost, sharp suit, red tie blazing like a political siren, was ready for his debut. A Georgetown student of international relations, yes, but more than that, he was a Trump. And tonight, he wasn't just stepping into the limelight. He was grabbing it. "Good evening. I'm Tucker Carlson," came the crisp, pointed voice of the host, eyes locked on the camera like a hawk before a kill. "And with me tonight is someone making waves in conservative circles. Baron Trump." A ripple of murmurs rolled through the crew. The son of the 47th President of the United States had entered the ring, not just as an heir, but as a fighter in his own right. Baron leaned in, flashing the camera a calculated smile. "Thanks for having me, Tucker. Someone's gotta tell the truth about Africa, and it sure isn't going to be the folks currently running it." Cut to Burkina Faso. Thousands of miles away, in the warm ochre glow of a palace office in Ouagadougou, President Ibrahim Traoré, calm, composed, and only 36, watched the screen. A tablet had been placed before him by his flustered communications chief. "Mr. President," Major James stammered, "you're being mentioned on American television." Traoré arched a brow. "Baron Trump?" He gave a small, amused laugh. "What's he doing, playing diplomat between midterms?" Back in the Fox studio, Baron was gesturing wildly, his hands slicing the air like a trial lawyer mid-argument. He had the floor, and he wasn't letting go. "Tucker," he said, voice rising with theatrical indignation. "Traoré, this guy, he's a perfect example of old world thinking in a new world age. He's out here waving flags and shouting sovereignty, while his people suffer under broken systems and backward ideology." The camera panned to Tucker, who leaned in, his trademark smirk blooming. "Specifics?" he asked, voice low and baited. "Oh, absolutely," Baron shot back. "Same day Traoré got cozy with the Chinese ambassador, he gave a speech bashing American imperialism. I mean, really? The irony is thicker than his military uniform." Laughter erupted from part of the studio crew. A few aides looked at each other, eyes wide. This wasn't just spicy. It was incendiary. Baron went on, voice smooth as glass and twice as sharp. "Burkina Faso has gold, resources, potential. But instead of building up institutions, they're busy playing the victim card. Blaming the West. It's lazy, Tucker. And frankly, it's beneath them." In Ouagadougou, silence hung in the room like a storm cloud. Ministers exchanged tense looks. Foreign Affairs Minister Fatou Sankara spoke first. "Mr. President, shall we respond?" Traoré, still standing, eyes glued to the screen, raised a hand. "No. Not yet. Let the boy finish." Back on screen, Baron was hitting his stride. "My father," he declared, puffing his chest slightly, "offered these leaders real economic partnerships. Real deals. But they'd rather rile up anti-American sentiment and tweet slogans about resistance." He paused, enjoying the flicker of attention. Tucker gave him the space. This was good TV. "And let's talk about how Traoré got power, shall we? He talks about dignity and democracy, but he walked into the presidency on the boots of a military coup. Democracy? Please!" The audience gasped. A few clapped. Someone in the control room whispered, "Is this still in segment 2? Back in Africa, Ibrahim Traoré slowly rose from his chair. Not angry, intrigued. Focused. "Prepare the cameras," he said coolly to James. "We'll speak tomorrow. Let the world hear from Ouagadougou, not just Washington." The next morning, Baron Trump woke up in his dorm at Georgetown with a grin and a phone vibrating nonstop. The Fox clip had hit 2.3 million views overnight. Twitter was ablaze. TikTok edits were already calling him Mini MAGA. But halfway across the world, another screen lit up. Traoré was buttoning his jacket. The sun cut through the windows behind him. The national flag of Burkina Faso fluttered in the corner. He turned to his staff, cameras already being mounted. We'll go live at 1400 hours. 5 cameras. Full broadcast. Let the Americans, and the world, see what dignity looks like. On our terms. His smile was subtle, but sharp. This time, we're not answering them. He glanced at the window. We're educating them. Ouagadougou, the next day, 2 p.m. sharp. 5 cameras. 2 flags. 1 man stepping into history. From behind a polished wooden desk, President Ibrahim Traoré looked into the lens, not with fury, but with precision. A steady fire burned beneath his composed exterior. Outside the window behind him, cranes swung over rising buildings. Red dust. Rising hope. He began in French, his voice resonant, rich. Then, shifting to English. My brothers and sisters, not just in Burkina Faso, but across the world. Yesterday, I watched an American student, Mr. Barron Trump, speak confidently, fluently, arrogantly, on television about my country. He paused. Not for breath. For impact. Normally, he said, smiling faintly, I would not respond to the remarks of someone whose greatest accomplishment so far is being born with a famous last name. Cut to Georgetown dorm room. Barron sat upright on his bed, laptop glowing. His smile faltered as the first words hit like distant thunder. His friends leaned in, half joking, half nervous. Someone whispered, Yo, he's coming for you. Back in the broadcast, Ibrahim's tone shifted, not angry, but surgical. But Mr. Trump's remarks reflect more than youthful ignorance. They expose a mindset, dangerous, dated, and still disturbingly common in privileged Western circles. And that, he said, now standing, requires an answer. He stepped toward a bookshelf, fingers brushing the spines of heavy binders and reports. Mr. Trump claimed I don't understand the global economy. He chuckled softly. Let's talk numbers. He turned, gaze steady. Since assuming office, Burkina Faso has increased our processed gold production by 340%. Our GDP has grown by 8.2% in a year. Food dependency dropped. We now import 60% less than before. He lifted a folder. The data glinted in the studio light. These are not slogans, Mr. Trump. These are results. Back in Georgetown, Barron's face had tightened. He opened his mouth. Closed it. The room had gone still. Ibrahim didn't stop. You questioned my legitimacy. You mocked our dignity. So allow me a little history lesson. He leaned in. Your grandfather, he said, voice calm but cutting, made his fortune managing brothels during the Canadian Gold Rush. Your father, well, the world knows his efforts to overturn an American election. The internet exploded. People spit out drinks. Phones recorded the moment and uploaded it before it even ended. And yet, Ibrahim said, voice unwavering, you talk about dignity. He walked to a large window. Behind him, a skyline being built from scratch. Dignity, Mr. Trump, is making sure a mother doesn't have to choose which of her children eats today. Dignity is not building towers with your name in gold. Dignity is building hospitals and schools. Barron looked away from the screen. Someone in the dorm muttered, Damn. Ibrahim turned back to camera, his tone now that of a teacher tired of correcting the same old mistakes. You say I should learn how the modern world works. Very well. Let's talk about that. He held up a bar of refined gold. Global market price, $800 an ounce. Before my presidency, we exported raw gold for $400. The West refined it. The West profited. We watched. He let the silence stretch. Now we refine our gold here. That's $400 more per ounce staying in Burkina Faso. That is how the modern world should work. Then, leaning forward slightly, his voice grew sharper. You mocked my age, as if being 17 years older than you is a punchline. Let me tell you what I've done in those 17 years. He began counting on his fingers. At 19, I was guarding villages from extremists. At 25, I led operations rescuing children from kidnappers. At 30, I had buried 23 brothers in arms. And today, I lead 22 million people. His eyes narrowed. What have you done, Mr. Trump, besides golf, tweets, and interviews? The blow landed hard. Barron didn't flinch, he froze. I was on battlefields, Ibrahim continued, while you measured Instagram likes. I negotiated ceasefires while you measured TV ratings. I learned the weight of life and death while you were still learning how to tie a tie. The screen cut briefly to images: schools under construction, clinics opening, farmland greening after decades of neglect. You said Burkina Faso is one of the world's poorest countries. True, he admitted. But you said it as if it were our fault. He turned, pointing to a massive map. For 60 years, France extracted our gold and uranium while forcing us to keep our reserves in their banks, earning pennies. They financed Paris while we buried children. And the global system your family praises? It kept us poor, by design. He snapped his fingers. In 3 years, we've shifted more than was changed in 60. You call that rhetoric? I call it revolution. Silence in Georgetown. Even Barron's friends had stopped watching. The screen felt like it might catch fire. Ibrahim returned to his table, pulling a sleek document from beneath a stack. A new technological partnership, he said, holding it up. Signed with China. With India. With Brazil. Then, looking straight into the camera, straight through the lens, as if Barron Trump sat across from him, he delivered the final blow. You wanted to teach us about power. Let me teach you about respect. He paused, then added quietly. When you carry the hopes of 22 million people, you don't beg. You negotiate. As an equal. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. The world was already listening. Then, one last sentence, measured, deliberate, devastating. Personal dignity is a luxury. National dignity is a duty. Cut. Broadcast over. But the conversation had just begun. Live broadcast, Fox News, New York. Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso. 2 leaders. 2 continents. One camera split down the middle of the screen, and the world watching. Barron Trump, once radiant with youthful bravado, now sat under the bright studio lights looking like a deer caught mid-headline. The broadcast had barely begun, and already, his silence was speaking louder than any headline. His phone? Buzzing like a hornet's nest. His mentions? On fire. But worst of all, a message from Ibrahim Traoré's office. We're watching. And we're ready. In that moment, Barron wasn't the son of a president. He was a freshman in the School of Political Reality, and class was in session. Earlier that day, Ibrahim Traoré had delivered a master class in statesmanship, not with shouting, but with calm facts and decades of earned authority. It wasn't just a speech, it was a reckoning. A leader in fatigues and dignity, speaking with the gravity of someone who had walked through war and still found purpose. At Fox News headquarters, the reaction was nuclear. In a quiet corner of the studio, Tucker Carlson received the call. Urgent. Get him back on. Now. This is spiraling. Tucker dialed. The voice on the other end was shaky. Barron, he said, carefully neutral. You need to come in. Fast. You're bleeding out on every network. Control the story before it controls you. Barron, now flanked by nervous peers who weren't sure if they should still be recording this, took a deep breath. The weight of his last name had never felt heavier. Back in the studio, he sat across from Tucker. The lights were hot. The stakes were hotter. His voice cracked slightly as he began. Gone was the cocky inflection. What remained was raw, uncertain. I may have spoken too soon. Too strongly. He began. Some of what I said clearly lacked context. Tucker raised an eyebrow. Barron. Ibrahim Traoré dismantled your entire statement. Are you walking back your position? Barron swallowed. I think President Traoré made points I hadn't considered. His leadership deserves a deeper understanding. The words were awkward. They landed wrong. And yet, something in them, uncertainty, humility, made the moment real. Then came a twist no one expected. Ibrahim Traoré, watching the feed live in Ouagadougou, picked up the phone. He turned to his team. Get Fox News on the line. I'll speak to him. But not in private. Let it be live. In 30 minutes. Half an hour later. History. The screen split. One man in a polished studio, hair combed, tie straight. The other, seated in a modest office, sunlit, grounded, real. President Traoré, Barron said, trying to gather his crumbling composure. Thank you for agreeing to this conversation. Traoré, unfazed, nodded slowly. Mr. Trump, he began. Leadership is not a show. It is a burden. If you're ready to learn, then the lesson must be shared, with everyone watching. Barron hesitated. Perhaps I was too harsh in my initial remarks. Perhaps? Ibrahim repeated, his brow rising just slightly. You questioned my legitimacy. You dismissed my country. You called me unaware of how the modern world works. The silence was suffocating. Barron pressed on. If my words offended anyone, if they caused harm, I apologize. Tucker glanced sideways. The camera caught it. He wasn't steering anymore. You didn't just offend me, Mr. Trump. Ibrahim replied, voice low, steady. You insulted 22 million people who wake up every day to fight for dignity. And survive. Barron nodded, now clearly struggling to keep composure. In hindsight, I spoke about things I didn't fully understand. Finally, Ibrahim's tone shifted. Softer. Not lenient, just human. Then let me offer you something, Mr. Trump. Advice that may save you from a future of empty applause and shallow power. He leaned forward. Leadership, he said, does not come from arrogance or inheritance. It comes from service. Barron stared at the screen, unsure what to say. You are 19. Ibrahim continued. And you hold in your hands more access, more influence, than most young people could dream of. The question is, will you use it to tear down, or to build up? A beat passed. Then, for the first time during the broadcast, Ibrahim smiled. It wasn't triumph, it was invitation. I would like to visit Burkina Faso. Barron said, voice quiet but sincere. I want to see what you're doing. You won't be welcomed as a Trump. Ibrahim replied without blinking. You'll be welcomed as a student. And students here? They work. Barron managed a faint smile. I accept. Traoré didn't let it sit. Then come help build a school in a rural village. There will be no cameras. No suits. Just bricks, heat, and humility. Tucker, trying to regain ground, leaned in, only for Ibrahim to interrupt, politely but firmly. Well, gentlemen, he said with a slight tilt of the head, it seems Mr. Carlson is also learning something today. The comment landed like a dart in the board. Barron turned to the camera, the same one he had once used to deliver sweeping accusations, and said, President Traoré, I accept your conditions. I want to learn. I want to understand what leadership really means. And for the first time that day, the world saw something unexpected. Not a Trump making headlines, but a young man, humbled on live television. And a leader, half a world away, showing the world what power truly looks like. Fade to black. 3 months later, somewhere in rural Burkina Faso. The photo surfaced quietly. No headline. No press release. Just a single, sun-drenched image shared, reposted, and passed from screen to screen until the whole world paused to take it in. Barron Trump, shirt damp with sweat, face streaked with dust, hands gripping 2 heavy bricks, was trudging across a field next to a half-built schoolhouse. Behind him, Burkinabe children laughed and ran barefoot, playfully circling the tall, pale American who had once declared their country backward, from the comfort of a TV studio. Now, he was one of them. Learning. Working. Listening. A BBC journalist, camera slung over her shoulder, approached carefully. How are you feeling, Barron? She asked. After everything? He turned thinner now. Tanned by the unrelenting African sun, dirt beneath his fingernails, something quieter in his eyes. I feel like I've lived more in 3 months than I did in 19 years. He smiled, genuinely. I thought I understood leadership. I didn't even understand life. At that moment, the U.S. ambassador, in clean boots, crisp shirt, and diplomatic shades, stepped into the scene. He had come to inspect the project, but paused to watch the young man lay a final brick. In part because of your work, the ambassador said, extending a hand, these kids will have a school. Barron nodded. No speeches. No quips. Just a nod. Nearby, President Ibrahim Traoré, no cameras, no audience, stood in the shade of an acacia tree, arms crossed, watching. Barron walked up to him and said the words he hadn't fully understood months ago. Thank you for this opportunity. Traoré looked him over, sunburned, calloused, humbled. Everyone deserves a chance to grow, he said. But growth demands humility. Without that, you're just taller, not wiser. That night, Barron opened a worn leather notebook, his diary, a habit Ibrahim had quietly recommended. Today, I understood the difference between privilege and merit. Privilege is what you're handed. Merit is what you build. After 19 years, I'd confused the two. Not anymore. 6 months later, Barron had transferred. Not to another Ivy League school, but to the University of Ouagadougou, where he studied French and international development. He rented a modest room, walked to class, and began documenting his experience on Instagram, not with designer shoes and parties, but with chalkboards, shovels, and shy, beaming children. No filters. No hashtags chasing clout. Just purpose. 1 year later, he co-founded Lumen, a nonprofit dedicated to building and sustaining rural schools in West Africa. It started with 1 community, then 5, then 15. The money? Part came from his own trust fund. But most came from donors who believed in what they were seeing, a former political prodigy turned advocate, bridge builder, and most importantly, student. Not of politics. Of people. 2 years later, New York City, UN General Assembly Week. As President Ibrahim Traoré arrived for the United Nations Summit, cameras swiveled, only to catch Barron Trump, now 21, standing at the airport gate in a plain suit, no entourage, arms wide open. The two embraced. Not stiffly. Not for optics. Like old friends. Like equals. That evening, over dinner at a small private reception, Barron raised a glass and said something few expected from a Trump. That live broadcast, the one that nearly ended me, was the best thing that ever happened to me. Because sometimes, we need to be broken. To be rebuilt the right way. Ibrahim nodded, smiling quietly. This, he said, is what leadership looks like. Back in Burkina Faso, children attended the schools Barron helped build. They wrote letters addressed not to Mr. Trump, but to Big Brother B. In French and more in English. They didn't just learn math or reading. They learned what growth looks like. Because in a world obsessed with power and image, Barron Trump's very public fall, and what he did with it, became something far rarer. A legacy born not of wealth, but of humility, bricks, and honest work. And that, above all, was the true lesson of that viral debate. Not that arrogance makes headlines, but that humility builds futures.